grateful to be at your service once again. In my previous tutorials, I have outlined about 7 topics that are needed to be treated if you are to do well in your academic part. Now, these 7 topics that I had wrote out initially, I had talked about sets, I have talked about statistics, I have talked about linear graph, I have talked about rigid motion, I have talked about geometric construction, vectors and bearings, and finally, I said I am going to deal with linear equation and linear inequalities. But those of you who were privileged to have watched my previous tutorials, I have dealt intensively on sets. And so if you have missed it, you can go back and watch my previous tutorials. Just go to AGPS TV, then you can touch on the videos, and then you see me there. And then you can watch my various tutorials on sets. But today I want to deal with statistics. I must emphasize that statistics do not have any specific definition, but we looked at the aspects of statistics to deal with that topic. And so when we are dealing with statistics, we are basically talking about how data are collected, how we are going to collect data. That is for statistics. And so when we talk about data, we are basically talking about an unprocessed information. So in a class, if I have conducted a class test out of a score of 10, I may decide to find out various students who have scored various marks. And so that is the kind of information I would like to take. Number 2, I can also decide to take information on the ages of my students. And so I want to know those who are, say, 12 years, those who are 14 years, those who are 15 years. So I am collecting information on the ages of my students. Again, I can decide to take information on the height of my students. For example, when you are dealing with the women exercise in school, most of the times you want to give the dose depending on the height of the student. So we may also decide to collect information. We may also collect information on the favorite subject of students. People may decide that they have maths as their favorite subject. Others will also go for science. Others will do for English. Even others, they will tell you they don't like any of the subject. They want sporting activities. And so we can collect information in that regard. Then that is for how data is collected. And after we have collected this data, how this data can be processed. How this data can be processed for graphical representation. So for example, if I go by the age analogy, if I want to take the age of, say, 10 students in JSS 3 class, a student can tell me that he say 10. For JSS 3, I don't think somebody will be 10. So realistically, somebody may be 13, another say 14, another say 15, then another 13. So let us consider this age as the ages of my students in class, 10. So one person is 13, 14, 15, 13, 14, 15, 13, 12, 14, 13. So basically, these are the ages, and this is the information that I needed. Now, after I have collected this information, I should be able to process this information so that I can present them graphically. The reason why we need to process this information is that most of the time this information is too large. Assuming that you want to collect ages of first-year university students, they can be 50,000. And so if you are first-year university students of 50,000, and then you have collected this information and then you don't process them and simplify them, then you may not be likely to be able to work with it. So I might decide to group the ages. So 10 years, I will count those who are 13, count those who are 14, count those who are 15, and those who are 12. And so I can group my age into so my information is years. So I count how many people are 12. So from here I have one person being 12 years, so I put it here. So number of people. Then for 13 years I have 4. So I also put 4. Then 14 I have, that also gives me 3. Then finally I look at those who are 15 years in my class, and that also gives me 2. So you realize that this is a simplified version of the data that I have collected. And so we are saying that for statistics, it deals with how we collect data and how this data is processed for graphical representation. And then when we have represented this information on a graph, how are we able to interpret this data? When we have drawn our graph, how are we going to interpret the data? So at the end of our lesson, we are going to collect data. We are going to process this information and represent the information graphically. And finally, we will learn how to interpret these graphs that we have drawn. But before I go into all that I have said, there are some key terminologies that I'll be referring regularly as we move on. And one of them is frequency. And so I would like to first of all draw your attention to what frequency is. When we say frequency, it simply means the number of occurrence of individual items that fall under a particular class. It is the number of occurrence of individual items that fall under a particular class, and can also be defined as the number of times an item or event occurs. And for the purposes of clearer understanding, I will be emphasizing on the second definition. I think it is more simplified and more readily acceptable. And so we are saying that it can also be defined, I'm talking about the point 2, as the number of times an item or event occurs. So back into the board, I had written some data on the board, but as you can see, I have 13 appearing 4 times. So this 4 is the number of times that 13 is appearing. Therefore, 4 becomes the frequency of 13. That is the number of times 13 has also appeared. We can also talk about 3 being the number of times 14 is appearing. Therefore, 3 also becomes a frequency. So when we talk about frequency, we are basically saying how many times does an event occur or take place. Again, if I go back to the age analogy, like it has been shown, how many people are 15 years in my class? How many people are 14 years in my class? How many people are 10 years in my class? And the number of ages I am going to have for each group or item is what we are referring to as statistics. But today, I am going to, as I have said, we are going to look at how these frequency tables are prepared and how we are going to present them graphically. And so today I am going to deal with pie charts as one of the graphical representation after our information are done. Now when we say pie charts, it is just a pictorial presentation of a processed information, a pictorial presentation of an information. Now, when we talk about pie charts, we are talking about graph in a circular form. Graph in a circular form. So another name for a pie chart is called circle graph. It's called circle graph. So for circle graph, we are only saying that draw a graph in a circular form. So let's take this as a circle. And so this is how we are going to present a pie chart. This is how we are going to present a pie chart. And for pie charts, we are going to present them in sectors of angles. And for sectors of angles, a sector simply means a place bounded by two radius. A place bounded by two radius. So if I have a center of a circle, a line drawn from any part of the circumference to the center of the circle is called a radius. And so if I draw a line from this part of the circumference to the center of the circle, it is called radius. If I also draw another line from this part to the center, I have another radius. So this is the place bounded by the two radii. And so this is what we call a sector of a circle. And so we are going to have that information and put them on sectors and represent them as a pie chart. And so how do you process and present information graphically on a pie chart? To do that, let's take our first example. Now, example. Now, let us assume that a teacher wants to organize election in a school on how to, as it were, select a school prefect. And so we have students contesting for the election. At the end of the day, the student cast their vote, and then we have put these votes into frequency mode. And so we want to take that example, and then we see. So let us assume that we have that question. Quickly put that question on the screen for me. Put that question on the screen for me. Now, if you see what is on the screen, they say that the following table shows the distribution of voters in an election for class prefect, like I've said earlier on. And then we have names of the candidates. And then we have the various votes they have amassed. But don't forget that this number of votes that you see on the right are frequencies. I have said that frequencies are the number of times an event occurs. So we have seen Akweye getting 6 votes, then Bokoye also with 12 votes, and Kome also with 18 votes. And so we are asked to draw a pie chart to illustrate the information. Don't forget that when we're talking about graph, we are talking about pie charts, bar chart, histogram, and then we're talking about stem and leaf plots. But at your level, we shall only be dealing with pie charts, bar charts, and stem and leaf plot. But now we have been asked to present information on a pie chart, and that is what I am going to deal with. And so back to the board. Now, to be able to solve this question, don't forget I have said that pie charts are circle graph, and so you are going to present your information cyclically. And so you know that to do that, you are going to divide them into sectors. But before you can divide them into sectors, you must know that every circle has a total circumference of 360 degrees. And for you to be able to do that, you must add all the frequencies. You must add all the frequencies. When you have added all the frequencies, then you pick individual frequency. Then you divide it by the total number of frequency. Then because you want a sector of 360, then you multiply your results by 360. You multiply your results by 360. And that is going to give you the sector for an angle. So let us quickly go to the Akweye table. So we have the Akweye. Then we have the Bokweye, and finally we have Komi. Then we have our I said that the number of votes can also be called a frequency, so we can also take that. Then we can also look for our sector of angles. So we have that. Now these are the number of votes for each. So we have 6, 12, and then 18 for Akweye, Bokweye, and Kome respectively. And so this is what we have. You can take the question from the screen. Thank you. Then from here, I have said that if you want to be able to find the sector for each angle, first of all, find the total frequency. And so the total frequency, if we add 12 to 18, we have 30. And plus 6, we have 36. And so our total frequency is 36. So we have that. Then, finally, to be able to calculate for a sector of each angle, it is important to pick the frequency for each category, and divide it by the total number of frequency and multiply the results by 360, since a total circumference of a circle is 360. So we have our Akwaye, which we have 6. We are going to divide it by the total number of frequency, which is 36. And then we are going to multiply it by 360. Then for multiplication, we can do some cancellations. So from here, 6 can go into 36. 6. So 6 goes into 36, 6. Then 6 can also go into 36 or 360, 60. And so here we have 6 going here, 6. And also 6 going into 360, 60. Therefore, finally, our sector of angle is 60 degrees for Akwaye. And that is going to be that part. Don't forget that angles are measured in degrees, and so they should be there. Then we come to Bukoye. And Bukoye too, we are going to do similar thing. And so we are going to have 12 as the item or number of volts or the frequency divided by the total number of frequency, which is 36, and we are going to multiply it by the total circumference of a circle, which is 360. Once again, 12 will go into 36, 3, and 3 will go into 360, 120, and so we also put about 120 there. And then finally, we put our degrees as our unit. Then we go to Kome. Kome also, we have 18. The same thing, out of 36, which is the total, then we multiply by 360. Then again, 18 can go into 36, 2. And then 2 goes into 360, 180. So finally, we are going to have over 180 degrees. To be sure that you've gotten the sectors of angle right, always try to sum up your sectors of angles that you have found and see to it that they are 360 degrees. When you have gotten 360, then you can be rest assured that your sectors of angles are correct. If not, go back and recalculate them. And so if I put my 180 and my 120 together, I'll have 300. And 300 plus 6 is 360. So it tells me that my final calculation is correct. And so to be able to draw a pie chart, it's important that you first of all find your sectors of angle. And to do that, you must first of all sum all the frequency to get your total. After that, you must calculate the sector for each of the angles. And to do that, simply pick the frequency for each item and divide it by the total frequency and multiply your answer by the total circumference of a circle, which is 360. The reason is that we are going to draw a circle, and then we are going to look for each sector of an angle, and so we need to show that. To be able to draw a pie chart, the first thing that you must do is to pick your compass and then measure a specific radius. It can be 3 centimeters, it can be 5 centimeters. Then you point the tip and then you draw a circle. And while you have pointed with the tip of the compass, indicate that place as the center of the circle. So assuming that this is where I've placed my pair of compass, so this is my tip, I am going to draw a very beautiful circle. As you can see, this is very beautiful. Then let me assume that this is my center. That is where the tip of the compass was when I have drawn my circle. This is your first step. The second step is that you must draw a line from any part of the circumference to the center of the circle. And so I am going to draw a straight line from the center to the circumference. And this line that I've drawn is going to be my radius. So when you have drawn your circle, you must always draw a radius. Now, after you have drawn your radius, then you are going to take your protractor to measure the various sectors of the angle. And to be able to get that right, make sure that the 0 point of the protractor is always lying on the radius. Make sure that it is exactly 0. Then when you have put it there, then you can measure the required angle that you want. It is advisable to always draw the sectors that are bigger first. So for example, if I want to draw my sectors of angle for Akwaye, Bokweye, and Komi, you see that Komi has the highest sector of angle. So we advise or mostly encourage students to draw Komi's sector first before other sectors are drawn. Try to draw the bigger sectors first before the smaller sectors are drawn. And so for the purposes of my lectures today, I am going to present how the pie chart will look like. And so on the screen, when you've drawn it, I would like to see a sector or a pie chart like that. And so you have your sectors of angles being there. So quickly on the screen, you see the various pie charts for the various ones. So you see Bukweye, then Akwaye, and then Komi being the various sectors there. And so at the end of the day, this is how your pie chart should look like. Try and take your time and present your pie charts. If it does not look like this, or if you did not find how to really get them, you can send your problem or your question on the comment column. I will take my time, read it, and I'll readdress it once again. And so this is how the pie chart should look like. The second example that I want to take, so that we'll be able to understand further, is that this data gives the monthly budget of a man, say Mr. George Efron, the headmaster of AGPS. And so when he has taken his money, this is how he intends to spend his money. He would like to spend 100 Ghana cedis on food, 50 Ghana cedis on rent, and because he's a good man and he's thinking about me, he wants to save for me. And so he has decided that he's going to put 50 cedis aside so that when I am in need and I go to him, especially in the time of COVID-19, he will be able to help me so that I will continue to come and be teaching you. Because he's a good and a kind-hearted man, he doesn't need money for anything. So he's saving for me, thankfully. Now, on a more serious note, the amounts on my right on the screen are once again my frequencies. That is the number of, or the amount of money I intend to spend for each item. That is for food, rent, and savings. And so if I want to draw a pie chart for the information that is being given, don't forget that anytime they use information, information simply means a process data. It means that the data has been simplified or it has been processed, unlike the raw data, where we just take the information. But when we say information, it means that we have done something with that information. And so that is the difference. Now, I want the question back on the screen quickly, and then we are going to draw our chart once again. So once again, we have our item, then we are going to have amount used. In Ghana cedis, and then finally, we are going to have our sectors of anger. So we are going to have that. And so we are going to have we're having our food, rent, and savings. Then individual frequency, we have 100, 50, and 50. They are in Ghana cedis. You can take the question from the screen for me. May God bless you. My technician, you are wonderful. I appreciate your work. Now, let us look at how you'll be able to find sectors of anger. In my previous example, I have said to do that. Try to find your total frequency, which is in this case the amount used. The amount used. So we are going to find our total. And so 50 plus 50 is 100. And 100 plus 100 is 200. So eventually we have our 200 Ghana cedis as our total. Once again, I said to be able to find the sectors for each angle, you must pick the individual item or frequency for individual item and divide it by your total frequency. And that is going to be your 100 divided by your total, which is 200. And then you multiply your results by the total circumference of a circle, which is 360. Then you can decide to work. From here, 100 can go into 200 two times. And then 2 can also go into 360, 180. I have seen students trying to do some sort of cancellations. Whilst I appreciate your cancellations, I do not advise students to be doing so. The reason is that it doesn't make your work presentable at all. So you should try to, as much as possible, if you want to do that cancellation, you can do a rough workout. So you can simply put your and you can do it as part of your work. If you cannot see it quickly, I would like to do it somewhere again. So we have I hope this time you can see. So you can do your cancellation if you want to. Then 2 will go into 360, 180. Then come and put your answer there and show the examiner how you have arrived at it. But do not do your cancellation inside the table. It doesn't make your work presentable at all. And if you have been following my lessons, you realize that cancellation is something I don't like to do at all, because I want my work to be presentable as best as possible. And so 100, as I've said, goes here 2, and 2 into 360, 180. Don't forget to put your degrees there, because angles are measured in degrees. Then again, I come to my rent, and my rent is 50. So we are repeating the pattern. 50 out of the total 200 times 360. Once again, 50 will go into 204. And 4 will go into 360, 90. So we have 50, 200, and then we multiply by 360. 50 into 200 is 4, and 4 into 360 is 90. So we have our 90 degrees. Now, do not think, because these are 50-50, and you have gotten your 90 degrees for the rent, you can simply write your 90 there. You don't do that. You must also show the calculation, because these are individual items, and individual calculations must be done. So for savings too, we are having 50 on 200 times 360, and our answer again is 90. And so we have 180, we have 90, and then we have 90. And so once again, to be sure, tally your total frequency, total sectors of angle, and make sure that they are indeed 360. And if you do that, then you are sure that your sectors of angle, you are working. And so you have 90 plus 90 is 180, and 180 plus 180 is 360. And so it means that your total being 360 is right. And once again, after you've done this, then you can present your information on a pie chart. And once again, to do that, you must draw your circle, and after the circle has been drawn, you pick your center, you draw your radius, and with the aid of a protractor, you measure the sector for each angle. And so back to the screen, I would like to show you how the final presentation will be. So you have rent being 90, savings also being 90, and then food being 180 degrees. And so this is how you should try to present your information. Once again, if for any challenge, you can draw my attention and then we can do so. Let us try to take a final example on this one, so that at least with 3 examples, then I can be rest assured that you'll be able to understand fully. This one again is a table that shows expenses of a family in a certain month. Because these figures are big, I presume it is for Mr. Felix Atta, because he's a man with the cash. And so when you are spending food, 500 cedis on food and 200 on clothing, 200 on housing, 400 on clothing, and 100 cedis on entertainment, then surely it cannot be me, because I don't have that kind of money. And so let us leave it as it is. So quickly, once again, I hope this one, because I've taken you through previous lessons, you are ahead of me, trying to present it without even waiting for me. But for the purposes of further understanding, let us have our item. Then we have expenses. In Ghana cedis. Don't forget that if you don't bring the Ghana cedis, it means that whatever individual amount you must write, you must put the Ghana cedis before the amount. But if you want to avoid it, just write it there so that it covers for all of them. Then finally we have our sectors of angle. And so we have that. So we have our food, housing, clothing, and entertainment. This time as our various items. And then we have the expenses to be so these are the various frequencies for each of them. Now, to be able to find the sectors of angle, like I have retreated in the first and second example, we are going to find the total. We are going to find the total. So, you can take the question from the screen quickly for me. And so, my total, 500 plus 200 is 700. 700 plus 400 is 1,100. And 1,100 plus 100 is 1,200. And so if I put them together, I'm having 1,200 as my total. So I have 1,200. Now, after I found my total, I'm going to pick the individual items, and each individual item I pick, I'm going to divide it by the total frequency. So if I pick my 500, for example, I have 500 divided by my 1,200, then I am going to multiply the results by 360. Once again, I said we are multiplying by 360 because it is the total circumference of a circle. And because per chart a circle graph, we need each angle sector to be able to do that. And so here we are going to do that. Now, we can do our cancellations. And then you can take your time and show the examiner how these cancellations can be done. But if you want to go by a simple way, then it is not too difficult to do at all. You will discover that these two zeros can nullify these two zeros. So if these two zeros takes away these two zeros, then we are left at 5 on 12 times 360. 5 on 12 times 360. Then 12 can go into 360 30 times. Sorry, 12 will go into 360 30 times. So 12 goes into 360 30. Then if you multiply 30 by 5, you have 150. So these two zeros nullify these two zeros. 12 can go into 360 30, and 30 by this 5 gives 150. And so finally, our sector of angle for food will be 150 degrees. You can also take your time and do it. If you want to do it, you can also show working, but the working should be part of your solution, and the examiner should be made to see it. Then we go into housing. So housing, we have 400. So we pick, we have 200. So we pick our 200 out of 1,002. Then we also multiply by 360. Once again, we can do this simple calculation. 0 will go into 0. Then we have 12 going into, this is 1,200. The total is 1,200, forgive me. The total is 1,200 and not 120. And so these two zeros will go into these two zeros, so they will be out. Then 2 will go into 12, 6. When these two zeros cancel these two zeros, you are left with 2 on 12. And 2 will go into 2, 1, 2 into 12, 6. And 6 will go into 360, 60. So finally, we are going to have our 60 degrees. I'm saying that these two zeros can cancel these two zeros. 2 go into 12, 6, and 6 into 360 is 60. 6 is 36. So we can have that. So we are done with housing. Then we can also go into clothing. And once again, clothing too, we have 400 out of the total, which is 1,200. Then we multiply by 360. Once again, the calculation can be done. These two zeros can also nullify these two zeros. So we have 4 on 12. 4 will go into 12, 3. 4 will go into 12, 3. And so we can use the 3 to divide the 360. And 3 will go into 360, 120. And so finally we have our 120 degrees. And once again, if I am too quick, you can take your time after my lesson and go through it. So we have our entertainment, and then the item there is 100. So we are repeating the process. So we have 100 out of 1,200, and we multiply by 360. And again, these 2 zeros will nullify these 2 zeros. That gives me 1 on 12. And 12 will go into 360. 12 will go into 360, 60. And so we have, 30, forgive me. 12 will go into 360, 30. And so we have our 130. So we have our, these 2 zeros cancel these 2 zeros. 12 will go into 36, 3. We add our 0, so we have our 30. So we put our 30 there. Now, for us to be sure that we have gotten all the sectors of angles correct, the basic evidence is to add all your sectors of angle and see to it that they are 360. And so when we add them, we have 150, then 30, and then 120 also gives you 150. So this is 150, this is 150. So the 2 gives 300, and plus 60 gives 360. And so when we add the sectors and they are 360, then we are sure that our calculation is correct. And then this is how the diagram also look. And so we have our 120, we have our 60, our 30, and then we have our 150 for each sector of the angle. And so I have advised you that if you want to present pie charts, try to present the sectors that are big first. So the biggest, so here you present 150. You present your 150. After that, you draw your 120. After that, you draw your 60. Then you draw your 30. When you finish, try to also measure them again and see that the last angle is 30. When you've measured the last angle and it is 29, please do not clean the entire work and draw it again. In as much as we want all the angles to be perfect, if you are able to measure and get your 150 right, or 120 right, and then your 60 right, and then you measure your 30 and it's around 29 degrees instead of 30, leave your work as it is. Chief examiner have said that they are giving room for plus or minus 1 error. For plus or minus 1 error for all angles relating to pie charts. So please, leave your work. Even when you want to lose marks, the marks you are going to lose is just going to be just a fraction of the total marks. It is not advisable to clean the entire work and redraw them again because of this, for the sake of time. You may want to draw them again, and as you clean it, they tell you 2 minutes. You may rush through it. You may not either finish, or you may finish, and then after that, you realize that almost all the sectors have not been measured well at all. So when you have plus or minus 1, it means that your work are relatively better. And so I am going to end here for today. This is how we do the presentation. Next time when I meet you, especially God willing, hopefully on Wednesday, this time around we will do the pie chart, and then we will answer questions on the pie chart. It is not all the time they give you an information to draw the pie chart. They give you a pie chart and they ask you to answer questions on them. And that answers the definition of statistics. How we collect data, how data are presented graphically, and how you can interpret the data. That is statistics. And so when you can draw it, sometimes they can also draw it for you, and they ask you questions and find out whether you'll be able to interpret them or not. And so see you on Wednesday. If you have not subscribed, kindly subscribe to the channel, like the page, and share. Please share, and let everybody knows that we are sacrificing. And then if you want to support the program too, we are putting things together so that you can also support the program. A lot of money is being put into this event so that it will be helpful to all of you. May God bless you. My name is Mr. Samson Anane. I was your mass facilitator. I hope I've been helpful to you. Protect yourself, stay home, stay safe. When the COVID-19 is over, we shall all meet one way or the other. May God bless you.
Abundant Grace International School, we are located right in Obuasi, precisely BDM. The school has a number of facilities that aid in learning. We have qualified and trained teachers who are ready and willing to assist the children. The school has many facilities such as the ICT laboratory. We also have a science laboratory. We also have a library. The school has a number of buses which convey the children from their various destinations to the school premises. We have the football team, we have the drama group, we have a lot, and the school is based on the Christian principles. For more inquiries, you can call this number 0541 310 901 0541 670772. Abundant Grace, in God we trust.